All right, guys, we're in the same general area we were before, but this time I'm gonna try slightly deeper trees. We were in a 3-foot range. I'm gonna slide up into the 4 to 5 foot range, see what happens. Maybe there's a few more bigger ones hanging out there. If they're not, I'm just gonna slide right back down to the 3-foot range. But the wind has shifted from the north, now it's from the south. So I'm not sure, but it's still cool out. It's still in the 60s. So let's see if we can get them. This deeper water, it's a lot easier to see them in there with the live scope. I threw 3 times to these trees in this little area, but then I saw something move on the outside, tossed it over there. All right. Another good fish sitting out here in the about 6.5 feet of water, or 5 to 6. It's varying a little bit, but it seemed to be sitting out here sort of suspended. I've seen a lot more fish today than I've been seeing, but some of them are just not wanting to hit. I don't know if it's weather change has done something. I've had a north wind, a front come through with a north wind. They seem to want to hit. Now it switched during the day today out of the south, and now it's just about laid down all the way. And I only have about an hour and 20 minutes today to fish, but just trying to get an idea of pinpointing them where they are so that I know what bait to use. I've been using a Senko or a variation of it, and it seems to work really well for suspended fish, right? You can also, by the way, instead of doing that, you can throw a flipping bait, and what you're doing there is when it comes by their head, they're wanting to strike just on instinct, and honestly it doesn't really matter color that much, other than that they need to be able to see it well, because they're just doing it on instinct. With baits that are sort of hovering near their head, it needs to be more of a natural color, in my opinion, because they have a lot more time to look at it and to see what's going on, to determine whether or not, you know, that's the thing that they want to eat. The other way, when you have a large weight and it's just coming by their head, they're just going to suck it in their mouth and just sit there. So it just depends on what's going on. I saw some of them sort of roaming, and that's why I decided to go again with the Senko. But later in the summer and earlier before the spawn, when they're setting up, getting ready to come, sometimes they get sucked up to these trees real tight and they just won't move for anything. And it's harder to get something like this flipped up underneath some of these branches. So you really need something with a heavy weight where you can flip it up in there and get it all the way and hit the tree with it, so it kind of tumbles down the tree. And when that happens, they'll just sit. They won't have to move. They just open up their mouth and they eat it. But anyway, today they're sort of, like I said, suspended out in 5-6 feet of water, because if they're sitting on the bottom and they're not very active, they're not going to come all the way up to get that. Then you need to send something else down, but it takes longer to do that, just depending on how you want to fish. So anyway, I decided today to fish pretty quick, just kind of bouncing it around the trees to try to catch some of the suspended fish. I'm seeing other fish down there, but I'm just not spending a lot of time trying to deal with them, just because I don't have much time. You know, in many of my videos, I'm making small comments about what I'm doing, where I'm fishing, how deep the water is and all that, but really the purpose of me doing that is for me, right? It's not really for you, because if you don't fish this body of water. But so just to talk about something for a minute that I think is a huge issue. You know, whenever I was a kid, people fished, but I don't think that there were the numbers that there are today. You know, the rise of local tournaments and the numbers of people in the water have increased dramatically. And with that, technology, different types of rods and reels and lines and hooks and baits and, you know, hardware and software and the boat, even the boats that you're getting out there in. And so everybody's using all these things all the way to their to the advantage of whoever has the most stuff and the most toys. However, there's something in the middle of all of that, that if you have this knowledge, you can beat the people with all of the other toys, right? And one of those things is the knowledge of the actual fish in your lake, not just the knowledge of the equipment that they have. I do recommend that you understand the equipment that you have and understand it well. However, the big thing to understand is the fish movement wherever you are, right? And if you know that, once you spend the time to figure that out, what you're going to do is give yourself an advantage, not only for the rest of that year, but for future years. To give you an example, you know, bass fishing has become extremely popular. Things just aren't the same that they were, you know, 20 or 30 years ago. The area that I'm fishing in right now is probably one of the most pressured areas in the lake. And so these fish are used to seeing a variety of baits. There's tons of boats here. In fact, I just about don't fish this area on a weekend. I tend to do it in an evening. There are a lot of good fish here, but there are so many boats, so many baits. I'm into this area before, and you know, you can't see really far, a couple hundred yards in some directions and not others, but you may see 8 or 10 boats just in this one little area here, and they're all over this area. You're fishing behind people constantly, and you're probably having that issue wherever you are, wherever your home lake is, you know. And so it's worth taking these little short trips. You know, some of you might have thought, you know, if I'm out here for an hour and 15 minutes, it's not really worth going out there, but it is for me, because I get a chance to figure out what's going on without everything else going on, without all the commotion, so that when I come back, when it is being pressured, when there are more people here, I can figure out what's going on. And I know where to go and what to do, and what they're going to bite. You may be frustrated when there's tons of people out, but anyway, it's worth making those quick trips. So if you've got time to do it, you know, if you can go in an evening, even if it's just for an hour or 2 hours, you know, to figure out maybe what's going to work for me this weekend when I have more time. It's worth doing. It's worth figuring out. Again, bass fishing has become so popular. There's a lake in our area too, Toledo Bend Reservoir, right? It made #1 lake in the U.S. Bassmasters, back in 2015 or something like that. You can't go into any cove and think that you're going to fish that and you're going to be the only one. Even if you're early in the morning, people are there before daylight and they're covering the banks. They're just fishing everywhere. There's tons of people, lots of people that don't understand etiquette and dealing with one another. And so, you know, it's helpful, I think, to try to break away, even just for a moment, to get out there and enjoy it when nobody else is there, to figure things out. It's worth it in the long run. It's worth making the trip and doing all that for an hour. So that's why I do what I do during the week on these little short trips. Today I'm in here. I didn't catch very many, but I did see where they were compared to yesterday evening when I was in here. I was in 3 feet of water, and now I saw them back here in this 5 or 6 feet of water. I know, because of previous experience, that the fish in this lake tend to set up, the females anyway, in about 5 or 6 feet of water pre-spawn. That's in the males. You'll find them up in shallow water, 3 feet or less generally. They're up there making the nests, getting the beds ready, and then the females will go up and meet them, right? Now that's going to happen in waves. It's not going to happen all at one time. There'll be a series of waves, or maybe even a week-long thing, because the weather is just perfect every day. Generally, we don't have that every spring. There's going to be little fits and starts to spring. But these fish, they're going to move up there, they're going to spawn, and that's not going to take long at all. The females are only going to be there for a couple of days, and then they're going to move right back out here. And then when they move out here, I know that they're not going to hit again. They're not going to be very aggressive for several weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but they're somewhere in that range there. They're just going to sort of sit there, just the stress of spawning itself. And then they're going to slowly start eating again, and once they do, they're going to set up camp back where they were before they moved up to spawn. And the reason that they set up in that particular area is because this particular area in this body of water is where they will find the most food, the most sources of food. The brim in this lake, for instance, set up in this area, and they'll move in May up into the shallow water. Now, a lot of those females will follow back in again when the brim move into shallow water in order to take advantage of eating them, and then the brim will move right back out. So in general, though, they're going to be sitting in this area of the lake. I'm sitting in like right at 6 feet of water, and this is generally where they sit here, and then they spawn from here back. Now sometimes they'll spawn in this area, but generally it's going to be in shallower water. And knowing that and understanding where they set up, whenever I come out here and I begin to fish and I catch several females, what it tells me is that that fish is either pre-spawn, about to move up to spawn, or it has already spawned and moved back out here and it's begun to eat again. And usually you can tell, you know, about the weight of the fish, unless it's been a length of time, right? And if we were at the end of April, beginning of May, I would say that they're all post-spawn, most likely here. But again, it tells me a lot. If I catch one and the belly is pretty flabby, doesn't look very stuffed and fat, I understand that fish is post-spawn, and that means other fish are going to continue to move out in that area, and they're going to be eating there soon, right? And so you can make one quick trip after understanding all that and fish from deeper water. I could start here in the 5 or 6 foot range and then move shallower as I fish, and I see where I can pick up fish. And once I realize where they are, it tells me about the cycle that they're in. And once I understand that cycle, I know that I'll be able to catch these fish week in and week out. And especially if you're coming at least once a week, you can sort of track them. Even if they move a foot or two in either direction, you can figure that out fairly quickly because you have a good starting point. And even if you miss a couple of weeks, again, they're probably going to be within a foot or two of where they were the previous time. Now, your body of water may be different in exactly how they set up, but if you have a deeper lake and there are creek ledges and such, that's probably where they went back to. Wherever the most abundant food source is, that's where those females went back to set up. And you're going to be able to catch those all through the summer in that area. And then in the fall, guess what? They move right back up again into the shallower water again to begin to feed as soon as the water temperature starts to drop. And when it gets too low, they move right back into the deep water again. And then at the end of the winter, they move up, getting ready to stage in order to spawn. And you understand that life cycle will help you to catch more fish. Just knowing that, right? And there's a lot of people that I know that fish that maybe they don't really understand the life cycle of a fish, and so they just think, I just don't know where the fish are, right? But once you catch them and once you understand that, it's going to help. So what I would recommend to you is to spend time understanding. The easiest thing to figure out is the spawn on whatever body of water you're in. You're going to see them in that shallow water. They're going to make those little clearings on the bottom. And when you fish, sometimes after the spawn, you're going to see those little groups of those clouds of fry in the water. And wherever those clouds of fry are, that's going to be very close to where those fish spawn. So make note of the kinds of areas that they spawned in, the depth of the water, and all the rest, and the timing, right? So once you understand that, you'll know next year, right? Okay, these fish have already spawned, and they spawned in this area of the water. That means they're going to be a little bit deeper now. And so next year you can take advantage of that and know about the timing of the year and say, well, I'm going to go out and start where those fish should be set up. Now, they may not be there, right? But all it takes is a trip or two to figure that out about where they are in the cycle. And once you do, you're going to be able to continue to catch them, right? So that's my recommendation to you. Spend some time getting to know the body of water that you're on and the fish that are in that body of water, and it's going to pay off big dividends. All right? See you guys next time. Please like and subscribe.